This is another story from the Decameron, the book of 100 stories written in the time of plague in the 14th century by Boccaccio. We are in a monastery in northern Italy. It's quite cold. The novice master is pacing up and down. He's an old man hunched forward with quite a beaky nose, and with his cowl pulled up he looks just like a turtle, which is what the novices call him. He's worried. He doesn't know what to do. He is walking back and forth. That's not so easy because the builders are in and they're rebuilding the monastery in stone, which was formerly in wood. He doesn't know what to do. He's got to do something. Eventually he knocks on the big wooden door to the abbot's private rooms. The secretary calls him in. "I have a problem." "Yes," said the secretary. "Is it urgent?" "It's very worrying," said the novice master. "Then we'll see you in 1 week. The abbot's a very busy man with all the rebuilding." The novice master goes away, not frightfully happy. 1 week later, the abbot has had time to collect all the information he needs. He knows how to run an abbey. He knows how to run business, actually. He's very good at it. That's why the abbey is being rebuilt. Come in, novice master. Do sit by the fire. I know your old bones get cold." The novice master, "I am worried," he says to the abbot. "Yes, it's about Paolo, isn't it? Paolo di Fivizzano." "How did you know?" "Well, I have my ways," said the abbot. "You're worried that he doesn't obey the rules and climbs out by that tree in the northwest corner of the abbey wall now and then." "Yes, master. And, further, when I chastise him, as is allowed by the rule, he accepts his punishment quite cheerfully. I don't know what to do, and his father is such a wealthy man, the Duke of Milan. I don't want to upset a patron." "Oh, well, then we must promote him," says the abbot. "Promote him," says the novice master. "He's furious. He's the most disobedient novice I ever had." "Yes," said the abbot. "Did you ever hear any scurrilous rumours as to how I became abbot?" "I have heard certain rumours, my lord, but I don't think there's any truth in them." "Oh no, they're quite true," said the abbot. "Let me tell you how it happened. The previous abbot, you will remember, was not a very clever man, and he had care of 2 giant wolfhounds that belonged to the Duke of Milan, who was not a very pleasant man, just like his father. And they got ill and died, and they were worth 4 florins. Well, he went to the Duke and said, "I'm afraid your wonderful wolfhounds have died." And he said, "Oh, that's dreadful. You must pay immediately, and a forfeit too." "Can I have a day to think about it?" "Oh, yes, you can have a day to think about it, and if you come back with the answer to these 4 questions, then I'll remit the fine." And the abbot said, well, what are the questions?" "Well, the first is, how far is it to heaven? The second is, how much water is there in the sea? The third is, what happens in hell? And the fourth is, how much am I worth?" The abbot paled. He could see there was no way out of getting to pay this large fine. As he rode home, As he rode home, he passed the miller, who was a cheerful chap and very clever too. He looked at the abbot and said, "My lord, you seem rather worried and downcast." He said, "I have 4 questions to answer, and if I can't answer them, I must pay a large fine." And the miller said, "Well, what are the questions?" "Well, it's the distance to heaven, the volume of the sea, what goes on in hell, and the value of the Duke of Milan." Said the miller. "I have a plan. Tomorrow morning earlier than usual, I shall take your horse and your clothes and go and see the Duke. And if I succeed, then you will be free, and if I fail, I'll be hung." "Well," said the abbot, "would you really try this?" "I think it's easy enough," said the miller. He was a very clever man. The next morning the miller set off on the horse and arrived very early at the palace. The Duke was surprised that the abbot would come so quickly to answer his questions, fearing that he would have to pay the fine. but the miller was ensconced in a corner, fairly dark, with the window behind him, and with the cowl up it was rather hard to see his features, and he did his best to behave in an abbotly-like kind of way. The Duke said, "Well, you have answers to my questions." He said, "Oh yes, it was quite difficult to do. The distance to heaven I had to look up had to write it down. It was such a large number. It is in fact 36 million leagues, 720,000 miles, and 22.5 paces. I have the measuring instruments if you wish to check." "Well, that won't be necessary," said the Duke. So he thought, this abbot is a bit cleverer than I thought. "What is the volume of water in the sea?" "Oh, that was tricky. I kept the barrels in case you want to measure, but it's 25,982,000 hogsheads, 7 barrels and 2 cups. It was difficult because the sea kept moving in and out, but nevertheless, I've kept the barrels and all the measuring instruments if you wish to check." The Duke thought, this abbot is much cleverer than I thought. "Ah, I've got you now," he said. "And what goes on in hell?" "Well, I spoke to Dante's informant, and he tells me very similar to what happens in your prisons, my lord. Torture, crushings, burnings, that kind of thing." Well, the Duke of Milan was getting more and more curious as to who this person might be. It certainly wasn't the abbot. He said, "All right then, how much am I worth, and your life hangs on it?" The miller, dressed as the abbot, replied, "Oh, that's simple, my lord, 29 pence. "What? He was incandescent. I'm the wealthiest man in the whole of northern Italy. How can I be worth 29 pence? "Oh, simple, my lord. Jesus himself was only worth 30 pence, and I've only made you 1 penny less than the Lord." At this, the Duke of Milan, who had a sense of humour, said, "Pull back your cowl, man, and tell me who you are." "Well, sir, I am the miller." "Well, then you will be the abbot, and the abbot will be the miller. And in those days you need to know that abbots didn't have to be part of holy orders. And that's how I came to be abbot, novice master. And that's why Paolo di Fivizzano needs to be made novice master, and you can retire to southern Italy, where your ague will be less problematic." Well, that was an approximation of that story. It's a lovely little story, and as I say, it comes from Boccaccio.